Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody back to the Awakened Being. I am here again today with Monique Hill of the Intuitive Soul Savant, and we are talking about judgment versus discernment. This is such a powerful topic, something that I've really been wanting to talk about for a long time, because, you know, I feel like a lot of us have gone through so many different types of judgments throughout our lives. And, you know, there's a really huge confusion around, are you being judgmental or are you just discerning who, you know, you should have in your life and who you are and, you know, what, you know, intentions and what are people going through that you need to be discerning about, because discernment is all about what you want to keep in your circle. And, you know, from a loving place, from a loving, you know, source. So yeah, let's jump right in, Monique. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm also of the mind. This is really powerful. This is big time for this time on planet. In my experience, as a Roman Catholic, raised as a Roman Catholic, that word judgment, ooh, it had some energy on it. And that word judging was bandied around my home and used as a control weapon when I wanted to speak my truth. So I'm very passionate about these two words, judgment and discernment. And coming from trauma-based childhood and living with PTSD, you know, for over 50 years, it's only now that I'm able to discern and master discernment and be comfortable with discernment. So discernment is a number one tool for myself to reflect my boundaries to others. And judgment is something I completely want to get rid of, because, well, not so judgment within myself and in my own reflection is fine, but I'm not really wanting to judge others to others. Do you know what I mean? If we can get discernment, to get discernment happening, then we won't have to judge others to others. That conversation doesn't even need to take place. And this is where I believe, you know, the Christianity perspective of judgment comes into play, because when I am judging somebody else to somebody else, there's also that danger that I can colour that other person's perception of the person that I'm discussing. And yeah, and in a sense, when we are judging others to others, we're not doing anything. There's nothing getting done. There's nothing happening there. And so what that shows me when myself, okay, what that would show me if I was judging somebody else to another is that I haven't owned that information and I haven't reflected on that information. I haven't taken that judgment to myself to say, well, if my judgment is this, then that energy isn't correct for me, whether it's a people, place, or a thing. Right? So coming from trauma, the inner child shuts down because she's fearful and scared of life and society. However, when we learn discernment, then the wounded child is able to arise and join society again, because he or she has the tool of discernment on board, so that we don't keep repeating the same patterns. I'm going to stop and let you talk. I could go on.
Yeah, no, and you know what? I just thought it was really interesting, because I wrote, you know, the dictionary meaning of each one, because I was like, you know, what is truly the difference, right? So the thing about judgment, and this was the dictionary meaning, is the ability to make the ability to make considered decisions or come to a sensible conclusion was one. And then the second part was a misfortune or calamity viewed as a divine punishment. That was the definition of judgment. Now, discernment was the ability to judge well the best of all. And the second one was perception in the absence of judgment with the view of obtaining spiritual guidance and understanding.
Oh, that's good. That second one, isn't it? With spiritual understanding, but it still doesn't talk about the way that you and I
Yes,
perceive.
exactly. And that's what that's what I thought was really interesting, right? So when I go back and learn, like reading more into what judgment is, it's like that final answer. It's like when you're talking to, like when you're judging, it's like this is how it is and there's nothing else. And whereas when you're coming from a discernment, it's like you're assessing the situation. It's not like it is this way. It's like you're open to hearing other opinions and having another way of looking at the situation instead of saying it's this way, that's wrong, that's the end of it. Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I really love what you were saying there is the judgment towards others. When we come to this conversation towards others that we know what's best, this is the end, that was wrong, or this is wrong, or the person's wrong, or the choice they made is wrong. It's like we're really shutting off the prayer or the intention that everybody has this ability to grow and evolve and expand through the experiences that they have in their lives. And we do it to ourselves too when we're self-judging. We keep ourselves stuck in these patterns or these ideas of it's wrong, and usually that's when we're doing it to ourselves, it's like a voice that doesn't belong to us. It's something that our parents judged us, or a teacher maybe judged us. And so then we have this decided view towards ourselves that we are not good at something, or this is wrong, or whatever it is. And I mean, I've worked with lots of people, and it's very interesting how the child listening to the parent judge a situation as this is how it is, now will internalize, even though the parent is talking about something completely different. They could be talking about, somebody different, but the child will internalize those judgments as, oh, well, I better not they ever be like that. I better not do those things. And so it becomes an internal judgment when we're listening to others, right? Whereas when we hear discernment, when we hear our parents just talking in a discerning way, then it's more of an expansion conversation. We're using different words, we're using different intentions behind it. It's like, that person made not such a good choice doesn't mean they're a bad person. Just means that maybe there's something going on in that person's life that they're feeling like they're, coping with something that is very difficult and hard for them. And therefore they're making these choices out of trauma and not, it's just a different conversation than this is how it is and it's wrong. And that's the end of it.
I think that's beautiful, that point you've brought up. I could never have even thought of that, I don't think. That what we see as children, because judgment in my family, very black and white family. You're in or you're out, that sort of thing. So I love what you said about judgment. And I think, as we evolve as a collective, we're getting more colourful. The black and white and religion is sort of losing that control power. We're moving away from the black and white of everything and allowing a little bit more colour. And I think that's real. That reflects in our rainbow movement and our LGBT or what have you movement. Mm-hmm. That's a great point. I love that. So as children, yes, we are learning from our parents, and if our parents could display discernment rather than judgment, we would learn so much more about self-love too. Because with discernment, you are making a choice and choosing a direction from that judgment. So if I'd have heard my mother say, oh, well, we won't hang around with the Joneses because she was so rude to me and I really don't deserve that. So I think we'll give the Joneses a wide berth. I would have learnt, oh, wow, it's important to respect and love ourselves with others, rather than what I learnt was, oh, I'm not even going to say it online, do you know what I mean? And so the children take that as a family system pattern into society and wonder why we come up against walls, you know. Yeah. And it really the nailing of discernment was relative to the family systems, because what stood out to me is, you know, when in families, yes, we have dysfunction. Okay, there's no doubt about it. You can't find me a family that hasn't got dysfunction. So in a family of dysfunction, there's lots of drama and gossiping. So if I have an issue with my sister, what would have happened was you ring the other sister up and you do a big download about that sister, and then that sister gets involved and there's all this gossipy energy and there's all this toxicity all happening. Whereas what I learned in my adult children inner child work was not to go to that sister, to discern that that sister's done that and to walk away. If not a sister, a friend, friend groups, office relationships. You know, there's such a thing as giving somebody a wide berth. We might not be able to walk away from them completely, but we can give them a wide berth. And what that means is that we're polite and we say hello, goodbye, but we don't enmesh ourselves into that relationship anymore because we have discerned that it isn't healthy for us. Now, and I could go around all the office and tell every staff person, oh, what they did to me and what's happened and who they are and judge. However, and then go back and be two-faced and not be true to myself. You see how deep it is and how freeing discernment is.
And that's, you know, the basis of it. And it's also honoring ourselves, right, with discernment, instead of, you know, when we have an emotional reaction to something, instead of judging ourselves for having an emotional reaction to something, discerning, using discernment to say, okay, I'm having this reaction, and making sure that we really understand what's happening inside of ourselves within the situation and with all of the aspects of it, and then being able to now be a more discerning of the person that may have caused the trigger. So we're kind of, you know, rising higher above the situation and looking more objectively at all of the moving parts instead of getting emotionally driven into it and, you know, emotionally driving the reaction. And, you know, it's also having patience with yourself at times and understanding that, you know, as much as you can learn and know how to deal with the emotional reaction, sometimes you may find yourself in moments of judgment, and that's okay. It's okay. You just have to pull the reins in as soon as you recognize it and switch it over to a discernment.
Okay, I love that. I haven't heard the word discernment being used on ourselves before. So, I mean, I know we judge ourselves, you know, as we were taught to do. However, you know, as we're making those changes within ourselves, we are stopping and discerning, aren't we? We're going, compassion is required here, not beating myself over the head. compassion is. I'm discerning. There's a sense of discernment. I think it's a space of wisdom. It's a space of maturity. It's definitely a space of human maturity, discernment, because gossip is distasteful and toxic, and so is judgment. However, we need to get through some of these steps before we get to discernment. I mean, if somebody was to gossip with a judgment and tell you that another person's situation, place, or thing is dangerous, you know, depending on the trust of that person, you could discern. But if you don't know that person very well, in your space of discernment, you know, that would come up. Do I believe this person and discern that I won't go there, or will I find that out for myself? You know, it's not a black and white tool.
It's not. And this is something that I've really learned a lot about doing this work, is that because most of us have grown up in such toxic environments growing up, that the only way, and this is something that I truly believe, is we need to be sharing our thoughts and our feelings about other people with people that we feel we can trust and feel safe with, because we can't know a different way until we're sharing and somebody says something, you're like, oh yes, thank you, I needed to hear it in those words, from that perspective, you know. And you know, I the whole idea of not gossiping and not sharing and not, you know, and gossip is a wide word that really contains a lot of good stuff that happens during a gossip situation, but it's not so this is just my perspective, right? Because honestly, change and growth happens when we can share our perspective with somebody in a safe environment and hear a new perspective. And that is coined gossiping. And if that's is coined gossiping, then I'm sorry, that's a healthy way to learn new ways of thinking. Right? Now, are we being critical and condemning the people that we need to become more discerning about? There is the question. Are we being that critical and condemning, or are we saying, what do you think about this? What is your opinion about this situation that took place with me that I don't really know how I'm supposed to react to? Because I've been trained so much to be okay in these situations. I've been trained to be okay in all of these very unhealthy situations. And now I can see that these emotional reactions are not healthy for me. They're not good for me. They're not making me feel safe and secure in the world. And maybe there's something that I need to do to put a boundary in place here, or maybe I just need to remove this person. But then it's the only way to really get there is to talk to somebody. Why do you think there are psychologists in the world? So that they can go and have a gossip session, and get it all out on the table and have somebody help you understand, okay, where's your boundaries? What do you need here? You know, instead of, you know, and not saying that that's not a great place to do that, but friendship is also a great place to do that.
Yes, very true. Oh, fabulous point. Fabulous, fabulous. You said so much. I'm trying to catch up in my mind with it. It's very, very true. We are teaching each other. We are helping each other with our you know, our judgments, our gossip sessions. We'll call them that because they've been so taboo, you know, with the religious hierarchy that you and I grew up with, definitely. I mean, that energy is dissipating on planet because there was so much control behind it. You know, there was no discernment.
No.
You did what we said. You didn't think for yourself. We're not even going to give it to you in English. It's in Latin. There you go. We don't even trust you to discern to say what you want to say. And you made the perfect point. We have been taught to put up with with dysfunctional behaviors and patterns and toxic behaviors. And it's after you becoming an awakened being that work really starts to take place. And I find it in social groups as well, because I went into isolation and I did all of that inner work for 5-6 years, and then came out of isolation last year and took different friend groups on that, not went looking for them, that came to me as I integrated myself back into the community. And you know, one group of people that have great habits, but I've had to give them a bit of a wide berth, because what I noticed was that they're all bitching behind each other's back. So, you know, I grew up in a family like that. I've had relationships like that all my life, and it was one reason I didn't really hang out with groups, for that reason. So the discernment came when it was like, do I want to be like this? And the other thing is, which everybody would have heard, if they're doing it to each other, I guess they're doing it to me too. Why would I be so special? You know, so that discern where we put our boundaries up and say yes, no, that discernment is telling us that we are being true to ourselves. We're not being manipulated onto another person's set of values. And this is why the work needs to be done, so that we can gently, with love, say, no, thank you, that's not for me. I'm not that girl. You know, initially it can be very reactive. No, I'm not going there, when we first start to put boundaries down. But as we start to practice and the guilt subsides when we put the boundaries down and we mature, then the discernment comes on board. You know, it's very important, especially coming from addictions. Okay, anybody whose life includes overcoming ancestry addictions and collective addictions, because they're not mine. Okay, I know I didn't come here and want to be an addict. There's no way. They're not mine. Okay, I'm clearing this energy, working through this energy. Discernment is number one. You go to 12-step groups, they will say you have to change your people, places, and things. That's where I get that people, places, and things from, in 12-step group. Because as an addict, you know, we can be strong with the group, but, you know, even now, you know, after over 30 years of 12-step work, I must discern. Are they smokers? Are they drinkers? I must, because I can't. To be true to myself, they're not my values. They're not Monique's values. They may have been the family that she was raised in's values, but they're certainly not mine. And that's where the conflict in life came from, trying to fit in with everybody else's values that aren't relative to an awakened being's values, or a light worker, or a starseed, whatever you want to call yourself, or a Christian, whatever you want to call yourself. It's up to your values, and it's up to us to be true to our own values, true to ourselves, true to our own values. And that's where your discernment can step in. You know, we're not saviors. We've got to be careful. We can't, I'll jump into that bunch of addicts and save all their souls. It doesn't necessarily work that way. As a light worker, if people aren't following you to the light, well, you want to be bloody careful, because it's very easy to step back into the shades of darkness that can come by wanting to fit in, basically. I mean, that's the bottom line, is that wanting to fit in. So that's where discernment has helped me. I've never even thought about discernment for self, like having that space and that time when we go into self-judgment to stop and discern, hang on, is this good for me? To berate myself like this. I mean, I had a client last week who has completely bashed herself up physically with her hands, head on the, you know, this is probably a beautiful thing. She's going to watch this today. You know, it's a beautiful thing to stop and discern. Hang on. And if we can teach our children this is the gift of a lifetime for our children, to follow our own beliefs, because we've talked about bullying here. on our podcast. And
Absolutely.
if
Yeah,
we
it's been very interesting. So my daughter, she's going to be 12 on March 3rd, but this year watching her in the 11th year, because I really feel like the 11th year, the 1-1, is all about really deeply understanding the mirroring process that happens, and like, you know, really starting to be able to grasp, who is this person that is, I've mirrored and brought into my reality, and do they reflect who I want to be? And I really watched my daughter go through this process this year of like really starting to understand, okay, I don't agree with how this person is interacting with other people, and I can't be their friend. And at first, when it was like, when she would come home and she would be like, oh my gosh, da 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 da, and I'd be like, oh, Ella, you're being so judgmental, like just hold back, like step back and take a breather. But then it was like all of a sudden this, thing just popped in. It was like, no, this is her discernment process. This is how she's going to learn who reflects the true values of who she is, and who she's going to keep close to her, and who she knows she needs to keep at arm's length. And being okay with watching her develop that. And then once I understood the discernment process, then I was like, okay, so now I can really help her. How do you put it, boundaries in place? I mean, like, for a sixth grader, it's like, they're very dramatic, and everything is very like such, the world of this is just so big, and how do I help her not make it such a big thing, and easily flow from, okay, you're not my kind of person, but this one is. You don't need to know that you're not my kind of person. You don't need to make that a big, huge public thing. You just have to have the intention, and you just have to say very clearly that, you know what, I'm just going to, inside of yourself, I'm just going to move away from this person after you've stated, these are my expectations of what a friendship looks like with me. And if you can't live up to that, then I'm just going to slowly pull myself away from that and move in directions that do match that. And watching her really be able to do this in such a calm, from where it started to where it is now, it's amazing. It's just calmly pull her energy from that situation and slowly putting it into other people that are matching her much more, much closer of what she wants to experience in friendship. And this is like what it's all about, is that's the discernment. She doesn't have to put that person down. She doesn't have to make sure that they know what they did wrong. She doesn't have to do any of that. And we don't have to do that. We can send them a beautiful little prayer saying, I pray that you do the best for you, and you grow and expand in the ways that you are here to do. And I'm going to continue doing that in another direction, because my energy and your energy right now is constricting me.
I honor you both. Such beautiful lessons you both taught each other, because from a Libra's perspective, it's all about relationships. And that beautiful Venus energy doesn't like conflict. That's Mars's business. And Libra doesn't like the conflict. So to actually cut somebody off, deception can be easier than cutting somebody off. And Pisces is the same. Your daughter's the same. I'm quite surprised how wonderful for her to be able to put those boundaries into place, because they're so sensitive and loving and giving and serving that they can go into that matrodome where they just become the doorstep, and they just put up and forgive everybody's bad behaviour. But it is detrimental to their own growth and their own purpose. But you just said so much. I mean, that's the judgment that you talked about, is my discernment really should not need to go back and tell you and everybody else why I'm giving you a wide berth. why I don't want to join you for the party on Friday night. I don't need to tell you, and I don't need to tell anybody. But before you can get to that, we really do need to go back and look at our childhood patterns, because what emotion jumps in around discernment is guilt, because we've been taught to serve everybody, to put up with bad behavior, to have no self-esteem or what's the word? Self-respect. Self-esteem, self-respect. So those emotions will come up when we first start to discern, and we may need to go and check with another mature, responsible adult. Am I right here? Is this okay? Because sometimes we need to do that when we've come from living out of our subconscious patterns, and we become awakened and aware and start to notice these things. This is where we really need good help, whether it is a counsellor. Counsellors are great, because counsellors will say, well, I wouldn't do that, or that's not, without telling you what to do. It is okay to feel that way, Monique. It is okay to do that, Monique. I think this is, I had a client yesterday. I love these younger people, the millennials and the Zs. They've got all this information of narcissism and gaslighting and all of these things at their fingertips. They're so much more aware and have so many more tools than what we had, so and if we can encourage that more and more and more, then we can sort of stop the bullying, because bullying only comes at a person who is not strong, grounded in the awareness of their own values and their own sort of true self. When they don't know who they are, they've taken on all these different values and patterns of the family system. It's a beautiful, beautiful tool. It's saved my life, this tool, and I use it daily. I use discernment daily, and I find now, because we had planned this, we've been discussing discernment and judgment in our meditation classes, and it's a buzz. It's a buzz as we move forward. Discernment is the tool we need, not to hurt each other, because this is the problem with discernment. If I say no to them, I'm going to hurt them. But if I say yes, who's getting hurt here? I'm hurting myself.
So it's very interesting. This just popped in just as you were talking, is so the divine judgment, when they say that after you pass away, you have to go through the gates of judgment, and, then it's God that decides, are you going to go to heaven? Or are you going to go to hell? But this is what happens, is we have to go through a review process. So we have to relive how we've made everybody feel in our worlds. And so when we relive how all of the emotions of how we made everybody else feel, then it's our own judgment. We judge ourselves as to, are we going to heaven? Are we not? Do we not have to come back down here to earth to relive and relearn the lessons that we need to learn to be able to finally go to heaven and not have to keep coming back?
It's amazing you've brought that up, because I'm also teaching samsara to our group, and I'm soon to make a video on Bardo, right? And the Tibetan Book of the Dead, right, was written over 700 years ago by Tibetan monks about what happens in the afterlife. So it was a couple of thousand years ago, and they buried it for 700 years because they knew the people weren't ready. So the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it's all come back up again, and an American fellow did a course on it, because to read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, it's quite it's quite hard to understand. You have to be very ready. And many people take 4 or 5 times, you know, before they're ready to even understand it. And I think that's the process of your spiritual journey and consciousness. So as he described it on his whiteboard, there's a small part, and that's our life. And then after we live our life, you can imagine a circle, the circle of life and death, they call it. And the Tibetans explained that there's one point at which you can jump off samsara. But they talk about the judgment, that is a part as well. But that one point is a tone. It's your true self's tone, and that's where the masters are. After Jesus, Buddha, all of the masters are off the cycle of life and death and are here in spirit. But as you go around the circle, it's familiarity and the things that we were attached to that pull us back into life. So in that short span of life, we are here to learn about our true selves so that we can recognize our own tone when we go into samsara. Now, if I don't do that work and I die, I will go into samsara, not knowing anything about that on an intellectual level, and we will go around this samsara circle. We may hear our family, this way, Monique, this way, come join us. Now, if I've still got that attachment and people pleasing on board, I'm off and I'm back into that family again. It may be a religious sect. It may be your partner. It may be your children. This is why the Buddha said all in life is suffering, but it's your attachment to these earthly things that keep you going round and round and round. You may have been a wealthy person and there's a big party going on and you hear the sound, oh, I'm going to the party. Oh, Jesus, I'm back in life and death again. So to know the true self is your key to getting off samsara, the wheel of life and death. Now some people might say, oh, why would you want to get off life? Life's amazing. Well, when you're an old soul, like the awakened beings are, there's not much here other than service that is left for us. Because we've evolved past that greed and that, you know, wanting material, physical matter things to fill a void within our soul and spirit. Do you know what I mean? So by doing this work, by becoming an awakened being and knowing the true self, you're familiarizing yourself with that tone that will be available to you in samsara. It just fascinates me that. So you need discernment. You need discernment for that, because we all want to fit in. It's a human thing to fit in. It's not a soul thing to fit in, because you're born alone and you die alone. It's with your own soul. You have your soul group, like us here, we're soul group. But, you know, that's discernment needs to be on board. It is so important once you understand. You get a choice. You want to come back or you don't. As a child, I said, that's it. This is it for me. Like, I'm really happy. I would want to come back as somebody's guide or what have you in the spirit realm and a higher frequency, a different frequency, unless I chose to come back like I have this time, you know, but you forget when you come back. So, you know, the discernment is needed. If you're wanting to get off samsara, discernment is needed to walk your path in this life. And yes, it's lonely. Until you realize it's not lonely. Until you realize that the loneliness is actually empowering, because I'm being true to myself.
Yeah, I worked a different vidcast a few years ago with a lady, and we did a whole series on the life and death process and what happens when you go through, when you're crossing over from life to death, and then what happens after that section. And, you know, there's a whole, there's souls that get caught in the in-between, like the purgatory aspect. And I feel like that's what you're talking about, that life and death cycle. But there's a lot of souls that actually go right through into heaven and choose to come back, and they do studies and they do different things in the spirit realm to prepare to come back. And preparing the rebirth process is, like, when you look into people who have experienced near-death experiences, there's a lot of really interesting similarities that all of them go through. That is so interesting. And, I can't help but feel like discernment is a lot of what you're going through as you're going through that process, even going into the spirit world and like planning and like all of that. I feel like discernment is something that you use to build, even who are you coming into this world with, and the soul contracts that you're making, and like all of that stuff. I feel like discernment is a big part of that.
That's what I got when I watched his teaching, which had come straight from the Book of the Dead. When he explained it in our layman's terms, that's exactly what I got. I thought, well, that looks like life. We're on this path to life, and people are offering this, and people are offering that, and people are offering this, and it's, do I need that? No. Oh, yes, that's it. That's exactly what I got. That living life was the same energy as the afterlife. We choose. So in that small bracket of living life that we have, the work that we do to embody and integrate our soul is now so important. So, in our younger days, they would say to you and I, oh, it's Earth School here, it's your soul's school, and until you really get that and you want to live at that school every day, we're in and out. We're sort of, yes, we believe that we are souls having a human experience, and then we go into and forget about it. We get attached to all the shiny things. Oh no, we get hurt. I'll go and work on my soul again. Whereas I think now there's a whole group of people that are just living as students, soul students on Earth now. We're doing it 24/7. It's our life. We have discerned that society and what's out there at the moment, it's not for us. So we're working in a different vibration frequency. Dimension is what a lot of people use, the 5 dimension. Well, that's your soul's dimension. That's where your soul lives, up in the 5 dimension, the 5th dimension.
Yeah, and I definitely think that discernment is a much more spirit-based way of assessing your situations, or assessing, your connections, and, is this expanding my energy, or is it constricting my energy? And is, when we're using discernment in that way, is it, an expansion, or is it a constriction? And really starting to follow the areas that's more expansion ideas. We have so much more power to move into those higher frequencies and allow ourselves, but not only ourselves, the other people around us, because sometimes it's not about keeping people in our lives. And when we're judgmental, I feel as though that forces us to keep people in our lives, because we don't want to be condemned. We don't want to be criticized for removing somebody in our life. But that keeps us small. It's like you're living small so that everybody else can be happy or not insecure with you, or whatever that is, or whatever reason. And then when we become discerning, it's like, no, I deserve to have an expanded experience here on this physical plane. And I need to maybe remove myself from situations or people that keep my energy and my spirit small. Right. And then that's when we're kind of, now we're stepping into the discernment. Now we're stepping into.
Yeah. It's our superpower, isn't it? It is our superpower. It's a human superpower, because we were given free choice. Think? Free choice, free choice, free choice. Well, we don't have a choice if we don't have discernment, because we're just going with the way our patterns have blown us to people please and keep everybody happy and avoid conflict and keep the peace and not rock the boat, and you know, all of this restriction that we have lived with, that have just locked us up and now causing physical health diseases. You know, this only goes down to disease. I mean, this just all flows on to the health of our body. You know, our skin is a boundary. It keeps the bad out and the good in. We need to have spiritual, emotional boundaries, as well as our physical boundaries.
And, you know, when we are so intertwined in our emotions, and one thing that I'm learning or have learned recently is that emotions are our external connection. This is how we're connecting to people. And then we have this other connection to spirit. They're kind of two separate things. And when we're connecting to people with our spirit and not with the emotion of, you know, expectation or, you know, trying to meet somebody's demands because you don't want to have an emotion, right? It doesn't allow the expansion of that spirit to connect to those people or the people around you. And this is like, you know, what we're here to do is to be able to channel more and more spirit, more and more of the God energy through us, so that people can say, oh, okay, you know what, that's how you do it. That's how I'm gonna, you know, you gotta, it's like I wrote a song and it's like, you know, for those who need a guide, you have to let your light shine. Right. And if we're constantly stuck in emotion and emotional connection to the outside world, we're not letting our light shine. We're shining through the emotion, which is a much more constricted and not so open way. And not saying that there isn't love emotion that you can have in your heart, that, you know, that God energy can move through. But to me, this like inner peace, this like core inner peace of tranquility and harmony and calmness has so much power to move a room than the love that we feel, the emotion of love that we feel in a moment. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It's very deep. I'm going to go back and watch watch this again, because you said something there, and it was about, you know, our true self is, you said the spirit, letting the spirit flow through and love flow through. That's who we are. That's our divinity. So that is our true self. So, you know, coming to know the true self, which is why we do what we're doing here today, is to bring these conversations out. You know, there's so much to operate in the true self. You've got to go through all those family patterns. You've got to get your self-love on board. You've got to do an inventory on your self-esteem to be able to shine. And this is where we've got to do our chakra work, because the emotional body lies in the second chakra. I'm telling you, I work with a group twice a week on the chakras. I'm writing a book on the chakras. So I'm researching all about these energy centers. And we're not going up into the higher dimensions. We're working on 1, 2, and 3. 1, the groundedness. 2, the emotional body. And the 3, the shining of the true self that comes when the emotional body's balanced. But there's a lot of work, and I don't want to scare people. It's beautiful work. It's freeing work. It's empowering work as you work through to get to the true self. But, you know, as an antidote today, I've got 2 antidotes. You know, write down get to know your values, and whether your values are your parents' values or your husband's or your group's values. It's very important to know your values and what you value. And that is your that's your guiding stick. Your gut, that second chakra, will let you know when you need discernment, because you've also got your intellect to discern through judgment, but you've also got that second chakra. And when it is cleared and balanced, it will let you know, something's not right here. Something is not in alignment with your true self, Monique, and you need to act. You actually need to act. Yes, you can ghost somebody, but you know, and that's forgivable, because you're on a path of learning to discern, and it may just be easier to ghost somebody rather than to say, no, thank you, I'm not okay with that. And people, mature, healthy people, have the right to come up to you and say, why aren't you hanging out with me anymore? And then you can lay your judgment down. That gives you the right, because they've asked you feedback. And so you have the right, kindly and lovingly and gently, to say, well, look, you know, so what I say to drinkers and that, you know, and smokers is, you know, I'm really strong on my own, but when I'm with others, I'm hopeless. So just knowing that about myself is a beautiful thing. That's one of my values. I'm fabulous on my own. You put me through with a group of people and I start wobbling. So for me to stay with my values and on my path, I have to discern. It's just easier not to go. Then I don't have to have this thing going on. I'm not perfect. You'd think that I would be after over 30 years of 12 steps with addiction, but that's not how it goes. My addictions come from my wounded healer in Pisces. So that's a wound that I have to carry throughout life. I have to deal with addictions. That's my ongoing thing, you know. So
I think it's really funny talking about the ghosting, and that's a big topic actually, because I seen a post that somebody wrote about the person who gets ghosted and the pain that they have to live with and work through to be able to be okay with the being ghosted. And it really, because you know, there's just been some changes that I've had to do in the last year of my life that I was very conflicted in, because I have so much guilt about you know, people pleasing and making sure everybody's happy. And I think that's a big Libra trait. Relationships are very important. And so I like to make people happy. And the people that are close to me, they know this very well. And so, you know, I've had to remove some people from my life, and in some cases, very important people from my life. And I understand that that probably wasn't easy for them. But the thing is it wasn't easy, all of the things that I had to go through to get to the place of recognizing that that was what was necessary, and also recognizing that my voice didn't have not being honored. And so it didn't matter if I said, and if they wanted to know, I would gladly let them know. Why? If you're coming to me with an open heart to hear what my energy has to say, I would gladly share all of it. And that's never happened. So that tells me even more how unimportant my voice is to those particular people because of that, you know?
Exactly. And part of discernment, there's safety required, because
Absolutely.
you need to be able to discern. If I just tell this person, right, we can't be friends anymore, if they're an overreactive type person, there could be violence involved. This is where you've really got to discern. And it's a maturity, it's a spiritual maturity to be able to look upon a people, place, or thing and judge whether that energy, let's get back, it's energy, it's not personal, whether that energy serves us as individuals. And we may have to make the call that it's safer just to ghost. And when everybody matures and wakes up, if someone ghosts you, it's like, meh, that's okay. I'm not their cup of tea. Or they're requiring other things. They're not wrong for not wanting to hang out with me. And I'm not going to go and try and sink into pity party that I'm bad or I'm something wrong with me. That's what, you know.
Yeah, no, and this is the other part. I mean, I've been ghosted in my life. I've had to work through all of that stuff. I know what that's all about, but I love what you were saying there about safety, because the only way we can raise to higher frequency, because the body sits in fight and flight, is to create safe, continually create and choose environments and people who protect our safety. And that means people who are able to see the big picture of your life and say, be discerning and say, oh, okay, I see what she's going through. I see the big picture here. If there's something that they need to approach me with, maybe there's a right time to do that. Maybe there's a right way to do that. And having people in your life who are going to do that. We're going to be able to support that and be able to, come to you with concerns, or with their expectations, or with their boundaries, whatever they are, even with their emotions, and be able to have that conversation in a very loving and open way so that everybody feels safe. And then, and once we step into discernment, we are in a safe environment. We're not being judged. We're not being saying, this is what you did and you're this person and that's the end of it.
And you need to change.
And you need to change.
We can't change anyone. We worked all that out in the last 50 years. You can't change anything.
Exactly. And so when we're discerning, when we have relationships that have discernment as the huge aspect of how you're relating to one another, there's this really safe environment of being able to truly be yourself. And truly lay it all out on the table and be that open book that all of us desire to be, but we keep ourselves in these confining relationships that don't allow that.
That's exactly right. So, as we're ending here, if you want to be safe, you need discernment. Safety is in discernment, right? I feel the safest I've ever felt in my whole life, because I have a voice now. I know how to speak up for myself, not tell them they're wrong, because I used to do that really good too, So, I feel the safest now. And here's the other thing. Here's the other kicker. You will start to trust yourself. Self-trust is important, and it empowers you. And every goal you kick where you've discerned something and gone, because usually 6 months later, you'll hear a story from some gossip and you'll go, oh, thank God I discerned that. Oh, good on you, Monique. Oh, you kicked a goal there. You saved yourself a shitload of pain and drama and, all the rest. So the safety in life is in your discernment, not in isolating and hiding yourself behind your front door because the world has hurt your empathic soul. If that's where you're at, it's now time to learn about discernment and stop picking the phone up and telling everybody about what that one's done and what this one's done and what that one's done to you. That's when discernment needs to go. Don't pick the phone up. That's when your reflection is, well, I need to remove them from my life. And if you can't do that, then you've got to go deeper into the layers of what's stopping you from removing. And usually it's guilt, fear of abandonment, fear of being on your own, fear of not being in the group. Is a lot, isn't there, Linda? To get to the tool.
Yeah. I feel like discernment is a lot about making sure you're turning inward to truly understand your perspective and the triggers that are happening so that you can act properly, so that everybody continues to expand in the world. So it's really, truly looking with an honest eye at yourself and being able to say, okay, what is triggering inside of me? And is this an intuitive trigger, or is this a trauma trigger, or what is it? So that you can really start to act on what is best for you. And when you act on what is best for you, trust me, really, truly best for you and your spirit, it's the best for everybody involved. And that's the discernment, right? That's when we're starting to look at it from a very loving perspective, when we can say, oh, I can recognize I'm going through a breakup right now. I can recognize that when I was growing in the womb, what was being set up there and why it's kind of kept repeating over and over again. And now I've gone through a lot of that forgiveness, and I'm not blaming him. I get it. I understand. He was there to mirror this in me so that I can heal. And I really pray for him to do the same, because he really deserves to have a really beautiful, wonderful life. But it's something that we have to separate now in order for both of us to raise higher.
But your main concern is you.
Well, it's about, yeah, it's about knowing what's going to raise your vibration, and that's what's going to raise everybody's vibration. But I know that you have to go, so we're going to tie this up, and we're going to thank everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in.
We might come back to this, should we? Like, give ourselves 6 months, and we'll watch this again, and then we'll bring more, because this is ongoing. This is, we're never going to get tired of discernment, because there's so many layers that need to be exposed to get to, you know, that free gift of discernment, where it just comes naturally. Don't even have to think about it, and there's no guilt, and then there's no aggression. There's only love.
Okay. Absolutely, that's right. And, you know, if anybody out there, if you're watching this and you feel that this conversation has been very helpful to you, or you feel very connected to the information that was shared here, please subscribe to the channel. There's lots of videos being shared here all the time about many different types of spiritual subjects and things to expand and open your eyes. So we'd love to see you on some other lives that we're doing. And thank you again, Monique. Again, such a lovely conversation. I love
talking to you, and I'm open up for consultations on my YouTube channel, and I mainly focus on the transformation, the death, the rebirth, and the transformation through a Pluto transit, or just in general through we're all going through this now. And as Pluto goes into Aquarius in March, we'll all be going down to Hades as a collective. And so this is where you're really going to need your discernment, for sure.
And I have group coaching and one-on-one coaching available for inner child and shadow work. Really getting in tune with that inner spirit inside, being able to really raise to those higher frequencies, and really coming into your true self and getting rid of all that trauma. We don't need that anymore. It's time to step into your inner power. I also just started a radio show too on News for the Soul, and it's called Inner Power. So there's going to be lots of teachings and things shared on there, and you can find us online, or we air in North Carolina, or North California, sorry.
And I'm in Australia. So.
Yes, and well, I'm in Canada, so, but I get to air in California, and there'll be workbooks and stuff that you can download through the classes. So yeah, that's what's going on with me. Okay, thank you, everybody.
All right, my love, we'll see you all next month.
Okay. Oh, one more thing that we have to say is the next show is going to be on March 16th, and it's cosmic energy changes is what we're going to be talking about. It's going to be an exciting show, I think.
On planet, and that's the 17th in Australia. You'll get that recording. Yeah. All right.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
All righty. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.